This is Steve the Happy Friar Howe from the website EarthQuake, and I'm interviewing Brendan Chung of Blendo Games, whose newest game is coming out soon, based on the Doom 3 engine. He's released several other Quake 2 GPL-powered games. So, Brendan, please introduce yourself.
Hey, yeah, so I'm Brendan. I run a small company called Blendo Games, and I've been making independent games for about 3 years now. And prior to that, I was working in the AAA game industry.
All right, so how did you get into indie gaming?
Yeah, so I was working in the AAA game industry as a designer, and I had been thinking about doing my own small games for a while, because that's kind of how I got started making games when I was really young. I was just making mods for games like Quake and Doom and Half-Life. And I kind of wanted to return to that because those making those small little personal projects was something I really enjoyed, and I felt that there was lots of territory that I wanted to explore. So after the company I was working for, they were unfortunately shut down, and I decided, I might as well take a stab at making my own thing and seeing if I can make a living off of it, see what I can do with it.
Okay, yeah, according to your bio here on your website, that was in 2009. So I take it you had some money saved up so you can live while you started this?
Yeah, so the company I was working at was Pandemic Studios. So while I was at Pandemic, I had been kind of saving up some money every month to kind of fund this little experiment of mine.
Okay. So what's the most popular indie game you've made so far?
It's probably a toss-up between 30 Flights of Loving and Atom Zombie Smasher. Atom Zombie Smasher is a bit more of a traditional game. It's more of a kind of a mix between a real-time strategy game and a tower defense game, and that caught on pretty well, surprisingly. And then 30 Flights of Loving is a bit more of an experimental story-based game. So that kind of was made for a bit of a different audience, but so that was a bit that got some traction for different reasons in Atom Zombie Smasher.
Yes, I remember Gravity Bone when it came out, and then it never connected to me that you also did Atom Zombie Smasher. I got it in one of the Indie Humble Bundle, and my kids love it. That's one of their favorite games, and it's weird because they have other games. We have Doom, we have Quake, they have Max and Magic Marker, they have World of Goo, but this one they like, even though you're saving little pink squares against little green squares, but they love it. And it's one of the games that they like to replay over and over and over.
There's something about when you abstract art that much to where people would just become cubes, that I think that it lets people kind of identify with them a little bit easier. They can, there is no realistic representation of people, so you end up kind of imagining in your own mind what they look like and how they're behaving, what their personalities are.
Yes, they like to turn it on easy so they can, take over the whole map. Especially my 8-year-old. But that's one of those games. It's like that, Unreal Tournament 2004, and Max and Magic Marker. Those are the three they all want to play. And
I love it.
And, well, I don't play those ones as much as they do. They got their own computer, and I'm usually down here doing work instead of playing. But, I saw on your website, too, you have other games. Flotilla, which is looks like a space combat type game.
Yeah, it's like a turn-based space strategy game where the ships kind of move in a completely 3D environment. So instead of just controlling them from a 2D plane, you have complete control of the XYZ of the ship, and combat is done in a turn-based style. And
Air Forte, that's a high-altitude game of math, vocabulary, and geography. Can you explain that one?
Yeah, it's a top-down game where you control a small little airplane, and it kind of is made for learning about geography and vocabulary and arithmetic.
Okay. So, for Gravity Bone, 30 Flights of Loving, and Quadrilateral Cowboy, you're using id's GPL engines. How come you're using that over something like Unity or any of the other ones that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, for a few reasons. I mean, one is just simply I just grew up using the id Software engines. Kind of Doom was where I cut my teeth, and Quake was where I um, was something I was really into during high school and college. And so when it came time to start making my own things as Blendo games, just felt comfortable to use what I knew well. And it was an engine that I kind of knew all the nuances of and was pretty comfortable with. Um, Secondly, there's something about having these engines be completely open source that I liked. So id Software released the open source versions of their engines for Doom and Quake and Quake 2 and Quake 3 and Doom 3. After the game kind of is off the shelves for a while, they release the source code for their engines. So there's something about having complete control over every single part of the engine that I really like. I'm in a position where, if there is anything I do want to change, being able to change it is something that is possible. The only thing that's limiting me is, my own skill set. Is me taking the time to research into how to implement this one thing. So I find that it's a position that I like to be in. And another thing is that there's just something about, this might sound kind of silly, but there's just something about the player movement of the Quake engines that just feels right to me.
Well, you're not the only person to say that.
What's that?
You're not the only person to say that. Lots of players who've played Quake since Quake 1 came out, like me, I just can't get used to Unreal games because it feels like the Unreal Engine is slightly different, and no one can ever nail it down. We don't know if it's the latency of the mouse input, the keyboard. It just feels different.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the way I feel. Is that there's just something about the numbers, the way they tuned it. Just there's this kind of weight that your character has. There's this kind of it feels like you're an actual object in the world that has a certain type of physics to it. That
instead of a floaty little bunny or something.
What's that?
Instead of like a floating bunny, like in Unreal, it feels kind of like you're floating.
Yeah, I mean, some engines you kind of feel like you're in ice skates, or like you kind of feel like you're a camera on just kind of hovering around. And I just never felt that with Quake engines.
Okay, so all of your games, you had a game about geography, you had one about spaceships, you had one about zombies, a tactical game. You had Gravity Bone, and you had 30 Flights of Loving, which are kind of like, I want to say shooters, but they're first person, but not really shooters. So how do you come up with an idea for these games?
I mean, for me, there's just something about being my own little company that doesn't have anyone to answer to. There's something I enjoy about trying as much different genres as I can. So Flotilla was my first title that I made as Blendo Games. And Flotilla is a turn-based tactical game. And I had never done a turn-based tactical game before. I have never made a tactical game before. I've never made anything. I've never made my own 3D engine before. So any reasonable company would say, we're not going to trust you to make this because you have no experience doing this and you have no track record doing this genre or this technology. But I find that there is something. I think that something happens when you pull someone out of their comfort zone and have them do something that they haven't done before. I think there's something happens when that happens. Like I like it when dramatic actors do a comedic role, or a comedic actor does a dramatic role. So for me, I like kind of getting out of what I'm comfortable with, which is generally first-person games, and just doing something else. So that's why I kind of jumped around to different genres, doing Flotilla and Atom Zombie Smasher and Air Forte.
Now, kind of on a related note, I've noticed your games, you said in the past 3 years you've done this, and you've released 1, 2, 3, 4, and Quadrilateral Cowboy will be your 5th, I guess, commercial game. Do you like releasing small games sooner rather than a big game with a longer development time?
Yeah, I mean, I do enjoy playing big games. Like, I'm a big fan of the open world genre. But as a developer whose company only has basically one employee, um, I can't do a big game on my own for just pure production reasons. So for me, it just makes a lot more sense to make kind of more smaller projects that don't have too many moving parts, um, and then release them, as quickly as I can, as opposed to spending a huge amount of time making a large project.
That makes sense because it seems many indie games, at least on like IndieDB, where when I go there and look at them, they have really big ambitions and they'll get partway in, but they always want to make what seems to be a big AAA style game.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of lucky in that I got into the mod making scene when I was maybe in elementary school or so, and I kind of cut my teeth doing that exact same thing where I would have these grand plans of making these huge Quake 2 campaigns or multiplayer mods or whatever it is. And I had that exact same problem where I just never finished them. So over the years, making lots of failed mods, I kind of learned to better scope my projects in such a way that they'd be more finishable.
Okay, so what can you tell us about your new game, Quadrilateral Cowboy?
Yeah, so Quadrilateral Cowboy is a game set in a 1980s cyberpunk kind of universe where the player is hired by big corporations to kind of sabotage and break into their corporate rivals and steal secrets and download data and do nefarious activities for them. And the gameplay is played from the first-person perspective, uses the Doom 3 engine, and the hacking is done through a small computer terminal that the player kind of carries around. So at any given time, the player can drop this terminal on the ground and actually start typing on it. So the player has to learn this really basic kind of programming syntax to kind of hack into cameras and doors and kind of manipulate the world.
So how long have you been working on this game?
So this has been my biggest project so far. I've started it in January of last year, so it's reaching 2 years now. Yeah, so it's a bit bigger in scale than my previous projects.
Now, indies might be interested in this next question. This wasn't on our list, but has being an indie developer been able to allow you to survive on it, or have you had to pick up another job so you can keep doing this, what you obviously love to do?
Yeah, I've been lucky that my games have been selling pretty well. So Blendo Games has been my full-time job for about the past 3 years or so. Just digital distribution kind of makes things feasible for smaller developers like me to just sell things online and not have the upfront costs of printing boxes and distribution and printing out CDs and things like that.
Okay. And now, I want to say I saw your name on the list of the QuakeCon, what was it, panel last year? 2 years ago?
Yeah, I was invited to a panel talk at QuakeCon. This is my first QuakeCon, so it was pretty exciting. It was a panel on modding the Quake engines, or the id Software engines.
So do you think that now that you're kind of relatively famous that has changed you, or are you kind of the same guy you were 3 years ago when you left Pandemic?
I don't think that I'm a famous person. That's definitely not what I would something I would say. I think I've been very lucky to have a following of fans that can support me and let me make these small little experimental things that that I've always been wanting to make, and due to internet and digital distribution through things like Steam, it kind of makes these things possible. So I'm very fortunate too that we have this collision of things like digital distribution and free, cheap tools online to make these things possible.
All right. Well, is there anything else you want people to know about you or your upcoming games? Do you want to say thanks to anybody who's helped you out or something like that?
Yeah, I want to thank you. Actually, I mean, you're a common poster on the Doom 3 World forums, and it's always very helpful information and helped me out a lot through kind of when I first started Doom 3 stuff years ago and up to now.
Well, I must not have recognized your username back then. But that site's very good, and I gotta say, BNA, the guy who runs that, he pretty much doesn't do any Doom 3 modding anymore, but he leaves that up there and keeps it running for everyone who's interested in doing the Doom 3 modding stuff.
Yeah, it's really an amazing resource.
So, all right, well, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to Quadrilateral Cowboys. Is it still coming out 2013?
It's kind of up in the air, but it's what I'm shooting for at the moment.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that one. I didn't even know 30 Flights of Loving was out until someone on Doom 3 World pointed me to your new game. And then I went to your website and saw, oh, there's a new game out by him. I didn't even notice that. So,
yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Stephen.
It was nice talking to you.